like the most sexiest thing that exists for me is 2 for 1. So
2 for 1?
2 for 1.
Okay, explain the 2 for 1.
And in everything, it should be 2 for 1. And so this is much about this sculpture can be contracted and expanded. So I was like thinking about how can I get like all these varieties of sculpture just by not destroying the sculpture, but like pulling certain string. That is the string in the middle of the 2 belts, 2 for 1.
Welcome to Future Dialogues, a series of conversations between artists and creatives, organized and hosted by Curimansuto and supported by Casa Dragones. The first series of conversations took place in the gallery in New York between March 2023 and May 2024. Today we're presenting a live conversation between Rirkrit Tiravanija and Bárbara Sánchez-Kane on the occasion of New Lexicons for Embodiment, Sánchez-Kane's solo exhibition held in September 2023, which coincided with Rirkrit's own solo exhibition held at MoMA PS1, titled A Lot of People. The artists exchanged views on how art, fashion, and cultural practices influenced their work. Bárbara Sánchez-Kane, under the figure of the macho sentimental, resists the traditional notions of mexicanidad and its relationship with the feminine and the masculine. Whether through fashion, performance, painting, or installation, all of his work presents the anxiety and fear of questioning pleasure and domination in a hegemonic masculine society. Even though Rirkrit Tiravanija's diverse artistic production eludes classification, he has accurately described it as relational, a body of work focused on real-time experience and exchange that breaks down the barriers between the object and the spectator, while questioning the art object as fetish and the sacredness of gallery and museum displays. So let's get to it.
So Bárbara and I were just inside there talking a little bit, and Bárbara just came back since the opening, basically, right?
Yeah.
And she was saying it's kind of interesting to be back to see the show again after having done it. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that feeling. What was the feeling when you came back and looked around and, yeah.
I guess it's about, like, I've never had a show that been up like 6 weeks and had all the sculpture talking to each other and talking with the persons that walk inside the show. So it's all these like, you know, like these tiny movements and even like the sculptures rest in a different way in time. So it's like, I kind of like, after the show, I didn't think that much about the show, let's say. I was like ready to rest a little bit, and then I came back and I'm glad to see them again because it's a show I've been working since the past year. But then again, it's like this work is like, it's not mine anymore, let's say, because it's already like in this space that has been confronted with so many like different people. And so it's a different reaction when I came here, and even from the outer space, I haven't even walked to the end of the bar. Maybe later I will see the end of the show. But it's a whole, like, obviously these past 3 weeks, like after the show, like you started seeing your work in a different way, and that always is going to be changing. It's nothing that is like a static feeling. So yeah, I'm glad to see them again.
So maybe you could talk a little bit like about the process of this show. I mean, I've seen other works which of course feels a lot more performative in a way. And in this particular installation, it's much more sculptural. I mean, of course, the opening had an element more of like, you know, somebody wearing and walking around. So how does that change, or how does it feel? I know that you don't divide you know, like the art from the, let's say, fashion. And maybe you could talk a little bit about how does that work for you? You know, how do you approach this rather than like approaching like making just a fashion thing?
I actually approach it as a collection, like the whole show, like when you get inside and see the newspaper, it looks like it's a past collection you're seeing. Like this magazine is showing something that is from a past collection, and then somebody took the clothing and put them on the wall in the way they wanted to find this object that was there. And so for me, like even like the paintings are in the back, you see all these bobby pins. And the bobby pins is like the leftovers of the fashion show. You always see them like confetti that will never go away. So it's like these tiny things, like there's like one there. It's like tiny gestures, like in the walls that I put. But like even like this, you can see the confrontation with the body and how the body could be draped with these sculptures. And for me, it was very important to have this element that confronts this sculpture, and the two black ones actually were one. And actually, it was a huge sculpture that I believe I was very much afraid about the space, because it was a very big space that I never like had the opportunity to show. So when I saw these sculptures, like it didn't address my work. It addressed just like this fear of presenting. And I do understand that. And I was like, I saw the sculpture, we needed probably 8 people to carry one of the sculptures. And then I was like, you don't, like, I cannot like carry you or like hold you or like use a part of you because you're too big, you know? So I did understand, like in that process, I believe like working in an art practice gives me more space for failure too. For this confrontation of not knowing where this piece is gonna go, but you're like leaving this piece and believing and coming back again and working with the sculpture again. And yeah, I don't know what else comes.
Let's go back a little bit. So, I mean, I usually, when I'm talking with friends, I always, or even my students, I always ask them like, how do you decide to become an artist? You know? Like what is the moment when you thought, I'm going to do something else?
It's more than, it's not like a decision, like for me, it's like I'm gonna become an artist. It's just where I starting fashion, like the same, let's say, system that I did prior collections in New York Fashion Week before. I did probably 3 in New York. And there's something that didn't feel right for me, because it was something like that was very rapid, like very quickly. And after a show, they were asking you, what's next? You know, you're like, I'm just presenting a show, like, say, like, calm down. So I don't know, it didn't feel right, but I do like the clothing and the aspects of the sculpture being the confrontation with the body is something that is very involving to my work. But yeah, well, I actually met Jose and Monica in New York in a dinner, like maybe pandemic time. Yeah, like 3 years ago in New York. But I'm just happy I could like keep doing what I like, really keep exploring, and had a lot of curiosity about exploration too into the process.
But also, like, let's say, I mean, you know, for me, I mean, I don't really divide looking at your work between fashion and art. I mean, I think it's one kind of whole thing. So, I mean, how does it go that you decide to go into fashion? Or like, what was that motive, you know?
Well, I studied engineering.
Okay.
That was my first. And when I graduated, I was like, I really didn't see me like working as an engineer in the way I was living in the south of Mexico. And it's a very conservative, very Catholic like space, let's say. And so
This is
Mérida, say Yucatan. So I was like, I applied to this fashion school in Florence, and I was there for almost 4 years. So even like the approach, but I would not study engineering, because even like the pattern making approach, it's very much like that engineering part of my, of my first degree into that. And like the approach to the sculptures and pattern making, like if you take one string of like this sculpture, it will form a bow. like one, but the whole concentration of it will deform but it could be, like I was thinking of how can you get, I'm like the most sexiest thing that exists for me is 2 for 1. So
2 for 1?
2 for 1.
Okay, explain the 2 for 1.
And in everything, it should be 2 for 1. And so this is much about, this sculpture can be contracted and expanded. So I was like thinking about how can I get like all these varieties of sculpture just by not destroying the sculpture, but like pulling certain string. That is the string in the middle of the 2 belts. 2 for 1.
2 for 1. I mean, a little bit, I guess for the opening, there was kind of like, it felt like there was a kind of person who was selling the show, or a little bit introducing. It was almost like someone who was, taking you around to look at the show.
When you enter the shop?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a shop manager.
Yeah. And the shop manager is working every day?
It was working every day for the beginning of the open, I think, after every Saturday or something.
Yeah.
See, it was very important not to keep, because it's not a pop-up. It's like, it is a show, like the shop is part of the show, and it doesn't end at this, just like when you finish the bookstore and you walk to the gallery space. It doesn't finish there. So it was very important for it to like permeate all around the gallery space. And even like I was smoking outside the day of the opening, maybe the day after, and there was this person that went to the gallery besides, and he saw the gallery, and it looked like a retail space, and he was like so confused. He just took his phone and started like just like going like that, and then he went in like kind of like where am I? And so it's a good confrontation to break these hierarchic spaces and keep like. Yeah. So that person that is accustomed to seeing art, it's like no, it looks like a retail space. It's not. It should not be here.
Yeah, no. I mean, I like that kind of. Maybe like the 2 for 1. Like you get the art space and the retail space. No, but I thought it was kind of like the performative aspect of the person taking you around, and I actually wanted to bring my class here, so that the person could like show them around, right?
There's this market, if you've been to Mexico, like the Granaditas market, that is the biggest one of shoes. And I used to get all the shoes of my runway shows there, and then started like breaking them and fixing them to create something for the runway show. And the whole aspect of like, it's like a piano, teacher, the whole thing, how they go around the boxes, with the hands, like looking for the pair of shoes. It was very important for me to like have this person, like there's this performative of how you fold things and how you like put them in the hanger and in the store. See?
So I was like, we were in the back and I was staring at a little hole on the wall, right? And Barbara was like looking at me like, okay, what are you looking at? And I think one of the things at least from what I read or like heard, you talk a lot about like that everything you do is coming from your daily structure. Like it's from details that you see, people who pass you, photographs you make in the street or in the subway. And, so maybe you could talk a little bit about like how you look at those things. How do you look at maybe the world and how you absorb it and digest that into like, as an object or a piece of clothing?
Well, for me, the let's say like the utilitarian part of clothing is like super important because I never carry a bag. So there was always these like hiding things and like pockets, and I almost never carry a bag. And so for me, it was something about like started seeing this like openness or closeness in like patterns that I could use for certain comfort in my daily life. But everything becomes a traffic of memories, like the newsstand with all the telenovelas, magazines, and like they sell toys and everything becomes this landscape of this newspaper stand and in Mexico City. And in these scales, you find this like amazing composition of assemblies of objects that by like, you're just, I guess, by the act of like repurposing them and like breaking them or like fixing them in your own sense, what's fixed or not, or creating a scar where it wasn't. It's just giving these objects a name that cannot be named, and you're discovering that. But then for me, even like things that are not even tangible, for me to get like a pattern for like a sculpture, it will me thinking, or even like a pattern for like a blazer. For me, I could think, instead of like constructing the sculpture, I could think of the cover of what the sculpture, like the cover of the sculpture, and of this non-existent sculpture. So these free gestures that I do on paper, I start like cutting them with this object that I just imagine, and I'm not even like taking, like not even doing a drawing, like per se, for this final sculpture. So the cover, so I think of the sculpture as a plinth, and then what covers it, that it becomes the patterns of the final sculpture. So this absurd, like taking these like pointy boots and thinking, if the pointy boots get dirty, what bag will fit those pointy boots that will get dirty while horseback riding with these long pointy boots? So you're like, okay, I need a bag. So you start like drawing this non-existent bag for this so it's like, say.
What about the body? Because you were talking about like the cover for the plinth, and then I was just thinking maybe the body is the plinth.
Yeah, it was and then we live in this world that everything is about how you look in the outside, and nobody wants like to peel the onion and like see more. But then the first confrontation is the confrontation with the dressed body. Even if we don't want it, is that we live in this not naked society, and I wish we did. And then, so there's these collides, and then like, even like, if you see the sculpture in the back of the rawhide desk, it's from this like book of draping of how to sell goods. So the plinth that sustains the selling goods that creates this desire, a marketable desire, is less interesting than the whole inside of the construction that, that holds the object. So the body will be more valuable than what you're seeing, but we don't live in that, sense of the world.
Yeah. You also speak a bit, you mentioned like this idea that, as Mexico is very macho, that there isn't really a discussion about like female sexuality. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I grew up like probably like I'm telling you, like in this very conservative environment, and like even like the body, it was like obviously a sin. So the confrontation with my body wasn't not real, because it wasn't mine. It was part of a different plan that was not mine. So I didn't have this confrontation with the body until older, probably like 21, like way older. So until then, I started understanding my body, and it was more as what I wanted to do with it, instead of this like 1,000-year plan of God. I don't know, like, see.
Okay, any questions? Help me here. No, also I was wondering, like, of course, like these are in between, they're like sculptural, but someone was wearing them, right? And I wonder, like, if whether like seeing it on somebody is also very different from like that being on the wall.
It is very different.
Yeah.
And you can probably, like, we can try and feed it. Maybe we had a feeding
We
with
need
you.
10 people to
like carry it. No, I like the idea of the sculpture getting down and, going out the streets and, and losing a ribbon or something in the way. And this act of losing something is not losing the sculpture. It's part of it, the preservation of whatever, So for me, that was very important to be out of the gallery too, like maybe a collector could see the book and be like, oh, I want to wear it. I don't know, like, and then live with it and be more personal with it and have this, like, instead of like putting it just in this shrine and having this sculpture could not be touched. So.
How is it different between doing an exhibition and doing like a fashion show?
It's not that it's not different. It's just the fashion show normally lasts probably like 10 minutes, not the backstage, just like the runway show. And for me, I treat it the same, just like it's like having a fashion show every day for 6 weeks. The models are gonna walk different. Everything is gonna be different. The public, and it's not gonna be the same emotion. It's like you're going to a play. You're not gonna have the same results. It's impossible to have. So, no, it's the same. I guess just like the day of the opening, we had a performer, and to having obviously all these people, like, I don't know, like up to like 50 people working with you the same day of the opening, it could be very chaotic.
Yeah.
See, there's a lot of voices, even if, see.
No, and I was just kind of thinking like whether like the idea, I mean, because I think you've made films or videos before, right?
Yeah, I did a film for Preta Patria.
Yeah.
See.
So I wonder if that is something like that would be part of the work or an extension of the work to like have, the possibility to understand it like in a different way rather than just sculpturally.
The approach to using film as a medium was because of pandemia in Mexico, and it was pandemic time everywhere, and it was a tool, I was like, it was a performance done by 5 soldiers, forming an escolta, and performing these movements that are based on the national himno nacional. And so it's because of that. But I'm probably gonna use video, yes, but not necessarily like I don't know. It was just a response for couldn't not do a performance at that time.
Yeah.
But actually, the videos of the runway shows, the ones that I have, are horrible. Like I cannot, they're bad. I just had people like filming it. I was not there. I was backstage, and they're very bad. So I don't have very good documentation of my fashion runways. So.
Yes.
I was wondering, does science fiction or science fiction movies or costumes that are occurring in those ilks ever affect you and make you think about things?
Not really like something like science fiction per se, but do we live in a world that is like crumbling down, and I guess it's our only escape to the reality we have in our hands, science fiction.
I think you said something about like also like a little bit like, I mean, it was almost like a surrealistic kind of dream.
Well, my dreams?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't, we were talking about how I don't, how do I don't write my dreams?
You don't write your
The only anarchist thing I can do. It's not like write my dreams to make something about them. I feel like they should be like gone and then come back. Dreams.
But do you feel like they should, I mean, like, but that impression comes into the work?
Yes, it's, it's dreaming how to give activeness to materiality and how can the work, like, I was asking all this, like, for me, like, when I started doing the exhibition, it's like, what can we do to, like, one of the multiple questions I was asking is, like, how can I, like, if I'm a fashion designer, how can I do something better for the system, let's say, And at the end, it was just these dreams about, I'm telling you, like, why don't we have all these things that can contract and expand instead of like working these new silhouettes, you call it, like, and see for that. But like dreams, it's all about these disobedient spaces that you create to reflect, what the people that surrounds you, and art as a collective practice too, and not on the individual work.
That was one of my questions I have, like I thought about,
I ruin it.
which is, it comes maybe also to this kind of futuristic thing, which is like, what is the silhouette of the future? You think about that as an idea, like, because of course, in a way, when you talk about, let's say, fashion or clothing, the idea of the silhouette is always, at least that's what I think they tend to try to like change, right? Or develop. So, but in a way, like to think about it as a sculpture,
maybe
like
chrome,
what is
maybe chrome, like SpongeBob, like you
chrome?
said.
The future is chrome.
Maybe.
Liquid.
No, I guess like even like the space of tension that you see in the sculptures still create this space of possibility of all these like voidness and holes, and this space to construct something else. Like when, like even like building these like jackets, all these like inner linings that you have to like support this part of the jacket that supposedly needs to be more like thick than the rest. And when you like draw a hole into that, and kind of like, shreds the things that supposedly holds everything together to create, a different effect on it. So I feel like maybe the future are holes. Every hole.
Futures
Use all
are
the
holes.
Say.
Yes. There's a mic, no? Thank you.
Hi. Do you ever think about how you want to make people that wear your designs feel?
Yes, and I actually I have a small showroom in Mexico, and I the one like selling and doing all that, and a lot of times. So I'm the worst sellers, first of all, because if something doesn't fit you, I'm like, just like, I don't want, like it doesn't fit, like. But then my head of studio obviously is like, Bárbara, go. But I do feel like I see the change, like, and it's nothing superficial. It's more about, like creating these, like sometimes like if you see the loafer shoes, the first time I was testing them, I was out, and then I was like in a friend's house with the kid, and the kid just saw it and started like laughing and started like playing with it. And it's the only connection I had with the kids, because I'm terrible with kids. So it's like all this interaction about the openings and closing of this like random loafer I design, But I feel like even I like the moment. For me, the day of I didn't expect this, but the day of the opening, I saw a lot of like old pieces of mine from 2017, 2018. And for me, it created this virtual space, because I had this person that maybe I didn't know, or I had the pleasure like to like see them in my showroom and like try and fit it. And then I have this confrontation of a past me, and then this, now that I didn't feel like they're not mine anymore. So in that moment, I saw them like in this, juxtaposition. And for me, it was very interesting to see how they talk too, and how did they didn't like each other, maybe, too. See? I don't know.
I think you also spoke about like making emotions rather than products. Can you?
Did I?
Yeah, you did. Can you talk about that? I mean, you were talking about like maybe like having done a show and people were like very emotional, and that's when you kind of said, yeah, you'd rather make.
But it was probably 2000, I don't know, 18, and I did a show called Clase de Bellas Artes con Sánchez-Kane. And it was a show that were 5 art students with this like draped scenery, doing fast sketches of the clothing that was presented in the show. And I just turned around, and it was one of the first shows I did in Mexico, because I actually presented in New York before Mexico. So it was a very emotional show with a lot of friends and family, and obviously that counts a lot. So I remember just like turning around and seeing these 3 persons that I don't know. They're not my mom. They're not my friends. So they're like enjoying the show and just like crying, and and it was like, and I remember I told my mom, like, it's like, how do you like the show? I was like, yes. I was like, there was somebody crying. It's like, what happened? Somebody died? I was like, what? I was like, no. Like the show, nothing happened. Somebody was crying. And yeah, it's the whole act of like seeing everything together for me. And then again, with family and friends that could never make that different. Like even the day of the opening, having all these people with me and supporting me was very important.
Hi. I have 2 questions. One is, how do you mutate the material? Because every time I look at it, it's a form of mutation for me. Mutation of different kinds, and it kind of shows something every time I look at it, really in a very materiality sense of it. And the second one is that since I figure that the use or the function is not a big thing for you, or when does the work end for you? Is there a finishing point? Not like end in the Hollywood sense of the end, but more about what is the finishing line for you as an artist? Because sometimes when you make sculptures or think of them as sculptures, as opposed to you make garments, there's a different kind of approach in which what you see as finishing lines of those 2.
Well, talking about when you enter the gallery space, there's this trench coat. That is the first approach I had with this 3-dimensional system that became, and it's kept mutating. I don't see an end of, like, for me, it's like the curiosity of how the extremes I can take a materiality. And even like, I took it to an extreme for me, and it was 8 people carrying it, and I couldn't, like, I was like, this is not what I want. And I recognize that. But the act, like, maybe, like, they're not mine. I feel like it's I don't feel like it's something like I need to keep, like, for me it's very important, the curiosity to keep exploration, because there's a lot of, well, for me at least, nothing happens by the pencil, always happens by fucking things over and having my drill. Like, somebody needs to take the drill off my hand, and I start like drilling holes everywhere and like connecting things and like pulling things, and I don't have that soft of a hand, because I always work with this materiality that looks like tough, because I'm not, my hands are like, I want to hold things, and I don't have, and pull them and strip them apart. And even like what you said, like, it keeps changing, even when the sculptures arrived from Mexico, they were different persons at that time, because they need like time to rest, and like, and the weather will like, have a different disposition in the materiality of it. And even the rawhide, the desk, it will never keep expanding. It always is shrinking, and then maybe if I put fire and water comes, that was gonna dissolve, and that's gonna become a wet towel that I can cast maybe this sculpture and recreate something. So the end product it's like the whole, it's a continuum process of becoming and unbecoming, and playing with it.
Hola, Bárbara.
Okay. No, mis lentes.
I'm really fascinated by the way you use very specific Mexican symbols, like the hymns, and how you did a transgression of somehow very nationalistic, or safety, which could be bank or could be IMSS or a hospital, the social security hospital, into something that talks about sexuality, about gender fluidity, about violence, about macho. I mean, for me, those are exquisite, brilliant, and fabulous appropriations of symbology that we all Mexicans are very akin, and we know that. But when you transform them, it brings to another level of understanding a country with its own circumstances of sexuality and violence. And so, would you talk about this?
Taking like the ints that you were talking about, is all these like national symbols that a lot of people are very afraid to touch. Even like the calla lily, a lot of Mexican painters are like afraid to touch because it belongs to somebody else. Nothing belongs to no one, I feel. And so for me, it was like this idea of why this like very like eagle is protecting this woman that is like giving milk to the baby, and it's like this like macho figure. So for me, the deformation of taking this symbolism that, like you said, like every Mexican recognize, and like turn it around, I love it. And it's the only way to get into people's mind into a cattle product, like say, to slowly get into people's homes and ideas. And maybe somebody very conservative will see it and don't even buy it and be like, oh, I love it. And there's like this eagle penetrating their homes at a certain time. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about sexier than sex?
Sexier than sex?
Sexier than sex.
Ah, you saw a video.
Yes.
Why you saw it? No, it's just this painting, no? I guess it was this painting. I started experimenting with painting like 3 years ago. And for me, it's this like period of time that I'm not working. So not working is sexier than sex. So it's like this period between, I believe it's like I don't need to talk to no one, and nobody. It's like I close the door of my painting studio, and that's that. So I believe it's like even it could be 10 minutes, a day, or 30 minutes a day.
By the way, you don't really show those. You kind of keep them to yourself.
No, I've showed them.
Yeah.
And like the two back paintings, the linen work, like if you destroy them, and it's full of like bobby pins, and if you destroy them, you will get the three-dimensionality of the rock there. So I like this idea. You need to destroy something to get to the other points. Look like a game. Maybe, start destroying to get that. See.
Do you ever drape?
Yeah, that one. You can, and this is like very much like, see? But I drape in, I guess, like I was saying, like imagining these like things that cover this non-existent object. That's how I drape. So like imagining the proportions of that, of like how, like, it's like the cover of a car, but it's not a car. It's like this like sculpture that you're imagining. See, like that, see?
No, I kind of like
the
those terms for making art, right? Like the idea of making a pattern, or the idea of like making drapes, like to use a kind of, maybe it's a kind of body, but maybe it's a much more open body than.
I don't know. It's the only, like for now, it's the way I know how to confront, the sculptures and see. I don't know. Like for like, I will show you the tiniest detail there. Like nobody saw it. Like nobody saw it, but see. And what else?
Do you feel it's important for people to see it?
I love that. See, I will show. I'll give you a tour of the tiny thing that's in the corner.
Everybody should have to come and look at this now after this talk.
Without the speaker, see.
Yes.
Hi. I wanted to ask you, Barbara, once you have an idea in your mind, how do you decide to make clothing or a sculpture or a collage? Like, how do you go about it?
I don't like, I just, no, I don't see, like, everything is the same, you know? So I don't believe, like, oh, I'm gonna do like, everything is part of my daily work, you know, let's say, like, and a jacket is gonna become a sculpture. And then, you know, like, when I was, like, doing this little person here, and it took me forever to get that form. It's like, to understand. And then I was like, then I understand, how do I get this form to stay and not to collapse? And I did, you know, I was like, okay, you're gonna be a jacket and a trouser, you know, and the jacket and the trouser, it is a sculpture, you know, and it's the components of the sculpture. But I got first of, how do I get this materiality? Because it's basically a lambskin that you need to, like, massage into an egg carton for a long time. So it's like you're massaging and then putting silicone inside. But I did millions of, like, probably took me, like, I don't know, like 5 months just to get a little piece of this to, like, don't break, be, like, reversible. But it's that part of the process of becoming that. It's like, oh, you can be this, you know, because I understand your flexibility, your mobility. And this is wearable too. Like, we have a model, like, wearing this too. So maybe your size, Rirkrit. Again, your size.
Yes.
I noticed a lot of humor in the exhibition, and there are, like, smaller jokes. Like, there was a pin in the wall in the front room.
Thank you for seeing it. Yeah.
And the Jesus shoes are hilarious. And I wondered if you wanted to talk about humor and it's, like, how useful it can be. And
the Jesus shoes were the first piece I started to, like, make for the show. And I guess when I was growing up in Yucatan, the only experience I got to sculpture was seeing all these kind of Jesus, in, you know, wood Jesus, metal Jesus, realistic Jesus, you know, like, it was like all these, like, plays of Jesus. So for me, it was like the first, you know, loincloth, you call it, see?
Loincloth, yeah.
And that was the drape, you know, so it's an understanding
drapery.
how to, like, see. But yeah, I guess too, humor, it was a lot of things. I like to play with it too, because it's, a lot of people don't know if you're making, it's a humor, you know, or you're, like, passing it over. So I do give them to them if they think I'm, like, not seeing the end result of it. But, like, the whole idea of, like, the Jesus shoes, it was like, if you stay as long, I don't know, probably like an hour on top of them, you will get the implants on your, you know, like you have in a bra. I don't know, wear a bra, but people that wear bras will have that or something. See, so it's that, like, it gets embedded into you. And I was talking about the bobby pins too. It's something that gets, you know, discarded and lost, and it's like you're, like, sweeping the floor after a fashion show. You always, like, get one and get another one and see. But then again, it's like creating this scar too in the pet plastic. That it's the patterns there. It's like creating this new space of point of view. While creating a scar is not something that is dismissed or is broken. It's something for you to, like, have a different point of view and observing. So.
Anyone else? More questions? It's been very nicely participatory. I actually want to ask you about, like, you also write, you do poetry.
I haven't written in a long time.
Yeah.
But I do sometimes under Solrak. That is my dad's name backward. His name is Carlos. And when I paint too, Solrak is the person that signs the paintings. See? But it's like, I don't know. I just write when I'm like heartbroken or something, like very
When
bad.
you're heartbroken.
See, no, I'm not heartbroken. I have not been writing, but it's just like this like process. So it hasn't been a long time. So I haven't written.
No, but I was gonna say maybe like the words. I was going to say language, but words seems important to you,
Yeah.
and maybe also like the play of words.
Well, the name of the sculpture. So I will give you. It's always like this, like the names of. It's like the rack is like parasite of host. You know, like I don't know, like you never understand who's like given to what. If the clothes is given to you or you to the clothes, and who becomes like this host or parasite, or this symbiotic relationship between both us. See, yeah.
2 in 1.
2 in 1 or 3 in 1, even better. Yeah, there's gonna be 2 for 1 in the bar, 2 of tequila, or 3 for 1 for everybody who wants to drink. And yeah, thank you for yeah. Or I'm quitting.
I said one last question.
Okay, I'm like
one last question. And it's like, you know, like what do you want people to feel when they see the show? What do you feel like? I mean, do you have any anticipation, any kind of wishes or dreams of what you think people would go away with?
I like the idea too that people. I like all the reactions, even the bad ones. Like I can take them, like 2, like even that. But I like the idea of people being curious enough to explore different mediums without the burden or whatever of having all these like studies and, you know, in the way back, as, you know, like, so a lot of people think we need like a lot of school, like, you know, like to go to school to become an artist, or I don't know. And I guess this liberty is the only liberty you're giving to yourself. And I think that's the most important for me to people to take, to be as curious enough and you can get, and that's that, and play with your curiosity.
Sounds good. All right.
Thank you, Rirkrit.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Future Dialogues. Our next episode will be a conversation between Roberto Gil de Montes and Joey Terrell.